There we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully now you can see my screen. And if at any point you can't, please just speak up. I've delegated that task to Godzilla. So using maps to tell stories, what I'm going to talk about today is, first of all, why might we want to use maps? Where would be good chances to share our information and our stories? Looking at doing that through maps. What are the reasons why we might want to do that? So I'll show you some different examples, and I'm sure you've all got some good examples yourself that you would like to put in. You can share those in the chat, and we'll also do a breakout room where you can talk about these as well. Looking at contributing information to maps. So not necessarily creating maps yourself, but actually adding to something that is already out there, enhancing information, maybe uploading some photographs, especially if it is a site or a property or work that you've done yourself and you feel that you've got some information that might enhance things that are already out there. So this would include maybe going onto Google Maps or OpenStreetMap and editing things on there. Also looking at My Canmore. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but I'll give you just a very brief overview of that. That is Historic Environment Scotland's interface for all of their records. So it's not just a map, but there is a map function as well. And looking at the Wiki Loves Monuments campaign, and I will highlight this because it runs concurrently with Doors Open Days in September. And so there might be some nice tie-ins there for the people that are interested in DoD, might also be quite interested in Wiki Loves Monuments. Looking at mapping also as a way of engagement, doing a bit of outreach and engagement, and this can be in person or actually just purely digital. It might be something that you're interested in. So I'll give you a very small case study of just one type of thing that I've done in the past and the digital output that resulted from that. And finally, where to create and share maps online. So we're going to highlight 3 different resources: our fancy, new, shiny digital Doors Open virtual environment that Alan and company have created for us, which is very exciting. And we would really like you all to be guinea pigs and go on and try it out and test it out and see the ways that you maybe want to be using it, as well as looking at publicly accessible things like History Pin and Story Map. So that's very much the part where you get to, it's not just creating a map, it's then using that map to tell an actual story or add some narrative to it. So firstly, why maps? Where are maps appropriate to share our information and our stories? So first thing, just visibility. So when you think about how many of us all use something like Google Maps to figure out where it is we're going, what things are nearby, in a more practical way, if you're doing a walking tour or trail, and Alan spoke last week when we talked about virtual tours, about being able to control the narrative and try to direct visitors in a specific sequence or order. So that's something where if you have a tour or a trail, plotting it out on a map step by step will help you do that and will help you tell your story in a very specific way in a specific area or location. Maps are very useful for spatial data and for visualization. So especially if you want to show maybe a geographic spread, the breadth of your project or where your connections are, but also very useful as an interface. So if you've got lots of information, sometimes clicking around on a map is a really clean and easy way for people to get to that, rather than just looking at lines and lines of text. And maps can also help us think around our topics. So when you're actually trying to interpret your information or understand your data, or whatever story it is you're telling, sometimes actually the act of putting it on the map helps you think through it yourself. And also, I would say that there is an engagement factor involved in this, that people quite like maps. When we're presented with a map, especially if it's our local area, you want to find where's your house, where do you live, where did you go to school, that kind of thing. It can be very interactive and engaging to have maps included in your work. So thinking about visibility, again, I think this is something very common. You just open up Google Maps, you see wherever area you're in, and you type in something like museum. I fancy going to a museum. Where are the nearest museums? I'm a visitor. I don't know where I'm going. So we'll revisit this when we get to the contributing to maps idea. Actually, Alan will talk around that a little bit more, but making sure that your property or your project is well represented, if there's an updated photo, if the pin for it is in the right place, making sure that you're discoverable by actually being on a map. Examples of routes or trails. So bear with me, I'm going to try to open up some of these, and I know that it is a bit slow sometimes. So if this is really egregiously slow, I do have all of the screenshots so we can stick to the actual PowerPoint. But sometimes it's nice to walk through things together in real time. So the example here, this is from Dunfermline. This is Fife Council, and there's a partnership with the Dunfermline, the Carnegie Centre there, put together a really nice little tour of the city. And there's actual several that you can get to. So you can follow this on your phone, or you could look at it online. The one that I've highlighted is the international connections. And you can see here, this is a little bespoke one that they've done with all of your text and information on one side and a map on the other showing you where you're located. You can scroll down and read the text and see the images. And then what I also like what they've done is put down some of the local places and spaces you can visit. So this is very much supposed to be for a tourist destination and involving the local businesses as well as the history. And again, thinking about controlling how people are discovering the story that you're trying to show. So this is taking you step by step. It's even suggesting at various places, this is a good place to sit down on a park bench and have a think about X, Y, Z, right? I particularly like this one, not just because I like Dunfermline, but this at Pitt and Creef House, General Forbes was a resident there. And if you have listened to me for the past several workshops, you can tell I'm not a native Glaswegian. All of my family is from in and around Pittsburgh, which got its name because General Forbes named it after William Pitt. We should probably call it Pittsburgh, shouldn't we, if we were being proper about it. So this is just a nice, again, the tour, it's curated. They've really put some thought into it, the ways that you're going to move around the town, the information that you're getting. And because the focus here is on international connections, it's pulling from these various things. And they have other trails. I think one's in Andrew Carnegie, as you'd perhaps not be shocked to find out. And one is, I think, Royal Connections as well. So another example, and this was one that in our audio workshop, Neil highlighted, which I am now slightly obsessed with. This is a walk through Glasgow's Merchant City. So this is an audio tour. So this one was made with Guidigo or Guidigo. I'm not entirely sure how you would pronounce the name of it. So you can create this online and add the text and add the sound clips to it. And again, a nice curated walk. It's thought out how long it's going to be for somebody to physically walk through it. And you've got all these points of interest. And again, when we share all of this, the material with you afterwards, all of these links will be there for you so you can see them when you want. So when maps are there to show you scale. So I've just taken this right off the Scottish Civic Trust website. using a map to show the sort of breadth of your influence or who your partners are. All of that stuff can be quite interesting. So you can see all these lovely points. What it can also do is show you maybe where you need to do more work. So certainly for us, the Western Highlands, the Western Isles, even though we've done some projects there, we don't have as many affiliated organizations that have sort of formal arrangements with us, right? So using these maps to show off, but then also for reflection as well. For presenting information, I'm a big fan of looking at maps as a way of accessing information. So I've highlighted here, this is work that Alan and the St. Andrews team have done. So this was during the First World War centenary. This is looking at the members of the Royal Scots, who died during the First World War. So this is pulling data from Commonwealth War Graves Commission, as well as the National War Memorial. So right away, when you're zoomed out on a map like this, you can see concentrations. So the biggest circle, which I've clicked on, pardon me, is Edinburgh, with over 2,000 soldiers having been born in Edinburgh. And what I particularly like about this is if you click View Roll, it pulls up the list. And all of these are clickable, and they will take you to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission link with the detailed information about that person. So to me, accessing this in a map, if you're trying to look at this information online, is a lot more interesting and user-friendly than being faced in the first instance with this big table of text with all of the links. Obviously, these are depending on what type of information it is you want to access. If you want to see where people are from, then the map is best. If you're trying to look in alphabetical order, then you want the list. But I think this is a really cool way of getting into these records, all these clickable links, by actually being able to zoom in and out on the map. And a similar idea, again, focused on First World War data. This is another project that was during the centenary. If you recall, there was a lot of crowdsourcing going on. So the National Archives and a number of other public bodies were asking citizen researchers to go out and find out information about people that participated in the First World War, uploading photos, updating records. So you had people all around the world contributing to this. So what this project, A Street Near You, has done is take strip lots of information from the National Archives, their portal, as well as Commonwealth War Graves Commission and other rolls of honor, and again, put it on a map. So the top of the screen, you can see this is a world map. And then if you zoom in, so here I've zoomed in just to a street in Aberdeen. And again, the way that this, for me, as a historian and an archaeologist who has done work on First World War topics, when you're thinking about the casualties for the First World War, the numbers are mind-boggling and really hard to wrap your head around. So when I see something like this, street in Aberdeen, where you can see almost every property on the street has a person associated with it who died in the First World War, you can click on all of those and get their links. If you click on the ones that are clustered together in 2s and 3s, quite often they are actually siblings or related in some way. So for me personally, I think this particular type of mapping interface makes it much more personal. It makes it much more relatable. You can look at your own street. You can think about these as being real people who are anchored in a very physical, real environment. Interpretation. This is a Google map that a colleague at the University of Glasgow has created for his research into Second World War. I do a lot of military history, in case you haven't picked up on that yet. Who does Second World War, looks at bombing in and around Glasgow. So I'm just going to turn all of these off for a minute. So the way that he's done this map, and this isn't public yet. This is actually just part of his research, and he's very kindly let me show you this. This is Mark Conahan at the University of Glasgow, if you're interested in looking him up. What he's done as a way to use the map to think through his topic. So first he's gone and highlighted all of the targets that would have been targets for bombing, the various industrial sites, the shipyards, this one here's John Brown, fuel storage, everything that would be of interest to the Luftwaffe coming over and dropping bombs. And then what you can start doing once you get everything plotted is, this is the Clydebank Blitz, right? And when you see that on the screen, every single one of these points is a bomb that was dropped. There are various types. And you can zoom in and see the actual extent of it. So this is why we talk about the Clydebank Blitz, and we talk about it as being quite a serious event, right? At that same time, this is what we call the Clydebank Blitz in March in 1941. This is what happened in Glasgow. So it's out with just the bounds, right? It's all across, and you can see some really stray ones as well, and he's tagged all of these. So again, this is for trying to work through information and then also using it as a visualizer to present it to people and help people work through and understand what it is doing. So actually, before we move on to contributing, what did I say? We're going to take a wee break. I know it's quite early, but because we have so many people, if we go into some breakout groups, it gives us a chance to maybe say hi, have a wee chat, maybe discuss some examples of your own. So I've just sort of thrown out some highlights, things that I think are interested, but it would be really nice if you had a chance to do that as well. So if you want to think about maps that you've seen where heritage has been presented or interpreted, or stories have been told that you think are particularly good examples, or perhaps there's a project that you've actually done and you've got some opinions that you would like to share, this would be a really nice opportunity to do that. So we'll start some breakout rooms. Godsel, are you happy to do that, or do you want me to do it?
Sorry, Jen, if you could start that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right. So let's just take maybe about 10 minutes. So until about 1:35. Is everybody happy with that? I will create them now. And you're just going to be randomly assigned. I now suspect Zoom does this by alphabetical order. I thought it was all mysterious the first time I ever did this, but I have my suspicions now, ever since we had all of the Neils in one group. While you were engaged, I saw Colin was sharing some nice links to maps that he likes. Is there anything else that anybody wants to share from the smaller groups? Are there any links you want to put in the chat, or actually does anybody want to speak to the group? Any highlights or?
One that, sorry, it's Colin Cooper here. Just basically what was discussed in our wee group, we eventually talked about QR codes and using them to, with a device appropriate, to end up on interactive activities that'll take you to a site. I don't want to name drop, but Historic Environment Scotland, Calaverick Castle, if I've pronounced it correctly, the triangular castle, which is basically has adopted the Pokemon Go idea. So a person, a family, an adult, doesn't have to be a child, can go around with their mobile device, scan what's effectively a QR code, up pops a character relating to the site or part of history in that specific area of the venue. And it's basically an exploratory guide through the whole site with a wee bit of entertainment value and learning experience. So yeah, and the likes of drone technology, you can use it with Sketchfab and have virtual maps. So it's not just 2D from over and above. You can actually zoom in, fly through, albeit from a remote and through a virtual experience is basically what we had. I'll finish there, thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that it's sort of getting creative with how we do these things, making things as interactive as possible. And yeah, I think HES, that some of the things they've been doing, especially so that they're no longer having to lend out audio sets to people, because obviously of the public health protocols we're following now, trying to think around that. How do we do things slightly differently so that people listen on their own devices? And like you pointed out, Colin, you can then even point them towards even more things, more ways of looking at a site or exploring a site.
There's a couple of notes, Jen, as well in the chat about different things that people have chatted about. Mary McHugh says they were mentioning copyright in maps and that live maps might be different from copies. And Phoenix has noted that QR codes can also contain 3D models, whether with a normal viewer or in augmented reality. And
yeah,
maybe,
so it's maybe using all of these places as portals to then branch off and see things in more detail or see extra information. I mean, that's always when you're talking about presenting information, you don't want to overload people. But then when you get somebody that's really keen, you need to signpost them to where they can go and get all of that extra stuff so that you're trying to cover your sort of range of your audience. And yes, when you're talking about copyright and maps, certainly if we're using sort of digital maps versus like actual printed copies, and who you're working with, if you're working with an artist to create maps for you, all of that, you do have to be aware of how you're sharing them and making sure that you have permissions, and giving credit to the correct people. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking through the chat simultaneously as well.
There's another couple of resources that have been mentioned as well, and I'm going to assume or encourage people that people will add more of the resources that they talked about in their discussions, add them into the chat, because then we can share them with everybody afterwards. But so Our Place app was mentioned through Newcastle University, and Women of Scotland mapping memorials to women in Scotland was also mentioned as a resource. So I'll put that into the chat, but it'll also be on the resources document that will come around afterwards.
Thanks. And I think especially as the women, what mapping memorials of the women reminds me, when we were talking about the hidden histories as well, that idea that by putting things on a map, we are making them more physical and more real. We're drawing attention to them, stories that maybe have been overlooked or not focused on. By actually plotting them, we make them perhaps more real in people's minds, or we bring them more to the forefront. Okay, well, shall we move on to our next section? So talking about contributing to maps that are already there. So Alan and Ian, did you want to show something on Google Maps very briefly, or do you want me just to put up my slide, or are you actually going to walk? Oops, Alan, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about Google Maps. I've actually got, can I share screen? But I mean, there's lots of different maps. There's lots of different map applications, and Google Maps I think is worth thinking about and is worth checking out, because apart from anything else, so many people use it, and I don't know, probably if we did a poll here, who here in the last week has used Google Maps, I would wager a bet that it was most It was most people. And I think it's just, it's my go-to for like finding out how to get somewhere. But I think it's worth knowing, and I'm sure most people do, that it can also be a way in which you can like communicate stuff about your heritage. And I would suggest that, you know, for anybody, it's worthwhile kind of. Am I sharing the screen? Can you see the Google Maps thing here?
Yes, Alan, I can see your screen.
Okay, you can see. You know, there's concern with a heritage association or a place or whatever. It is worth checking out what is on there for Google Maps, and also to be aware that, you know, it's not that difficult really to put things in there. So, for example, this is in the northeast of Scotland, Caen, and there is a Longhouse Township, Longhouse, Scottish Highland Township. Okay, so which is something that we were involved with. Now that didn't used to be there. So what we did was we went in and recommended to Google Maps that place be added. And then once you've got your place added, if it's not already there, then you get a sort of a thing like this. So you can, this is assuming, sorry, I kind of start from the beginning, that you have a Google account, you make a Google account and kind of join Google Maps, and then you get then you can log into Google Maps, as I've done as part of the Cine project here. Once you've logged in, then you've got a menu system which enables you to do things. So one of the things you can do is find a place, and once you've found that place, as I have done here, you see there's a little review, so you can write a review which kind of tells you about it, and you can click on here. And really simply, you just drag your photographs or your 360s over, and then when someone clicks on the Longhouse or on Caen, they will get access to the photographs that that you've got that are associated with that place, or to a review that you've written about that place. So that's really simple, straightforward thing to do. Here, what we've done is we've taken a digital reconstruction and put images of the digital reconstruction on, so people can see what it was like in the past, prior to the Highland clearances, and written a nice little review. And then you can click on share. And so you can then stick reference to this review and to the information you put on Google Maps. You can stick it into Facebook, Twitter, or you can just share a link, or you can embed a map onto a web page, and so you can get an iframe and the like, which is all very nice. And so that's different ways in which you can take something which is, and again, I don't, you know, there's lots of things about Google Maps we might take issue with, but one thing is that I think is certain is that it is probably, well, it's the most used map in the world, isn't it? I think more people use it than anything else, and as such, it makes sense to have a presence there. And so this is some stuff we did in Norway with the Lofoten Aquarium, and I don't know if you can see, but it's like 1,000 views there. So it's quite, and here's another one. So there's an image that's had 278,284 views, and another one that's had 59,000. It looks as though that same image is coming up multiple times, but it's just a glitch in terms of the way in which Google Maps is working. So yeah, so and when you can also upload things through Google Street View, which go to the same place, and when you're uploading them, you can actually link them together into tours so people can connect together. But I don't want to go into that detail. So I think that was what I wanted to say about Google Maps.
Okay, thank you. And I should say as well, I feel like I need to do more of this. I need to upload more because recently I have 2 small children. So when you're traveling around, sometimes you want really mundane information about a place as well. It's not just a really beautiful scenery. You kind of want a little bit of context. of where the car park is. And if there's a little park, is there a playground? Do you see, can you see if you spin around in the views? And I think for accessibility, there are lots of reasons why people would like to see an environment in and around different spots. So maybe we could all get better about, if you take a wee snap, uploading it to things like this, so that we can all maybe have a better sense before we go somewhere of what it's going to be like, and we can all feel a little bit more comfortable and confident. Maybe especially now that we're allowed to go out and about a bit more after over a year of not being in practice, easing ourselves back into that and helping each other know what sites are going to be like and what to expect before we go there.
Yeah, I think so. See this thing here, add a missing place. So you can just go in and like add a place. It's recommendations. In other words, they're not obliged to follow what you say, but there's a good number of, and you can add your own businesses, edit the map. Catherine, where's the thing about where do you make your own maps? I'm sorry, I just kind of missed that.
Is it? Let me see if I can see it on your screen.
I think it might be your places. So if you go to your
I think
places,
so.
Right, and you go to maps here, see all your maps. I don't think we've made any great ones.
Yeah,
here,
create a new map.
You just click on create a new map. Go on, and then you get a map, and you can start adding in places and so on. And I think that I recognise the Clydebank Blitz map. I think is made using this. So if you go in here, you can make a map that looks very much like that. There are downsides to it, but one of the good things about it, once you make your own map, and you can make your own lists as well, you can share them, but also maybe Google will decide they like it and give it a boost, in which case your numbers can go, can go stratospheric. I mean, but what we do is we do work with Google Maps, but we also have got a kind of like a virtual museum system, which I kind of touched on earlier on when we were talking about galleries and timelines, and there's a mapping component to that, which is the thing that we've done with you, Jenny, making a map which links to all of the virtual tours that your students and others, students that were working with you and others were able to find. So I think there's 144 virtual tours from Scotland from last.
Yeah, and we'll show you that in a little bit more depth throughout later on, because we'll show you that portal where all of that information is. Okay, I will share my screen again. Sorry for all of this switching back and forth to screens. Okay, hopefully you can see that now. So again, thinking about contributing to maps. So that was Google Maps. And again, the map that Alan was talking about here is the base of that is OpenStreetMap. So that's different. It's not, I don't know if any of you have tried putting Google Maps, for example, on your own websites, but was it in 2018 or 2019? There was a limit to how many views you could get without having to pay. And it became a big thing because lots of us in the heritage sector and small voluntary organizations were all relying on these maps and had to think about clever ways. So for example, I know with the Doors Open Days map, it used to be right on the landing page. So anybody that went to Doors Open Days website saw that map, and we sort of had to move it around and find other solutions because we were just getting way too many views on it. But the map of virtual tours, which I can show you very quickly, and again, we can go into this in more depth towards the end of the session. So it originally started out as a student project. We had student interns from the University of Glasgow look at what were the already available virtual tours around Scotland with an idea towards moving towards a digital Doors Open Days. This is when it was just a beginning of an idea. And they pulled together these sites, which Alan and the team have built into this lovely map. So, and this is not, this is like collating all the information. This isn't something that we've gone out and created all of these tours, but again, it makes a lot of sense to present this on a map, and it's clickable and you can explore it and see all of these nice sites. And we'll show you how to actually contribute to that later in the session. Another resource, and this isn't strictly mapping, but if you work in and around heritage in Scotland, Historic Environment Scotland has the Canmore database. So that's all of the scheduled monuments, listed buildings, all of the records of the historical environment. So this is their big catalog that you can search and find sites, but you can also add information on these things and add photographs, for example. I like to search around. There is a map function, which I can show you, but I like to use the map to search around, especially if I'm traveling. I like to see what sites are in the area I'm going to be going. But if you go somewhere, you can see here I've saved a few things. For example, the Scottish Civic Trust headquarters in Miller Street in the merchant city of Glasgow. So here we are on a map. You can view this on a larger map. You can add and remove layers and look at it. You can't contribute to that map, however. So I don't want to spend a lot of time in it on this session, but I do just want to highlight to you, you can enhance this information. So you can see down at the bottom, these are sort of adjacent to the official Historic Environment Scotland approved records. If you sign up for a My Canmore account, which anybody can do, you can go down here and say, I would like to contribute an image. And then you just browse for your image and upload it. And it will appear in with the digital images. You can also contribute text. So if you have knowledge you would like to share about a site or you have comments to make, you can do that there. And you can, for all of these records, you can click into the My Canmore. So again, if I just go back, I don't know why it's logged me out again. This is one I contributed the other day. This is a chambered cairn, and you can visit your sites and the things that you've uploaded. You can have an alert so that anytime somebody wants to suggest an edit to it, you see that. So again, you can view it on the map. You can't change anything on that map, but what you can do is add all of these additional. So this is all the official. Every time there's been a visit previously by the Royal Commission, subsequently by Historic Environment Scotland, all of the different references in and around this particular bit of heritage. So this is my photograph that I just uploaded the other day, and it was, I have to say, it was instantaneous and it was very quick and easy. You can see the text there that you will put in your metadata. But say maybe you went and one of these stones had fallen down. You know, you can add that, or you can say things have changed on the site since the last time somebody was there, right? And you can always search around on the map to do that. So the other, this is a map-based function that I would like to highlight to you, is Wiki loves monuments. So if you are familiar with Wikipedia, you know that it is all crowdsourced. It is all people adding information, editing the information to make sure it's up to date, and is responsible and well thought out. And there's also part of that is Wikimedia, where you can find free open source images that people have contributed that are usable with Creative Commons. And Wiki Loves Monuments is specifically focused on listed buildings and listed monuments in the UK. And you can see Scotland does have a sub-page here. And the reason that I'm flagging this up is many of you are in the Doors Open Days community, which happens every year in September. Wiki Loves Monuments also runs every September. It is a campaign that runs for the month. It's run as a little competition. So what you do is, if you have people that are maybe going to be visiting your Doors Open Days site, you might be in a listed building, or you might be in and around listed buildings. So it might be fun to show people how this works. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to my slide, and I keep clicking on the wrong thing. So what happens here is in September, this all goes live. You can search around on a map, and this map shows you everything in blue. So I've clicked here on Perth Bridge, for example, has an image that has been uploaded to Wikimedia that is open source, free to use as part of the photographic record. It's totally publicly accessible. Everything in red is a listed structure that does not have a photograph available. So if you're very Anoraki like me, you might like to make a little project, sort of going up and down around where you live, or if you're on holiday, and seeing where these places are and going out and snapping photographs of them to upload. And the way this is done is through the map. You just click on these pins, and you can see here there's an upload function, and you can just upload your image. And if you're doing this as part of the September campaign, you get entered into a little photo competition. So if you take a really nice photo and you upload it to the resource, you could win a prize, which I think is maybe a gift voucher. I don't remember what it is, as well as bragging rights, obviously. And it is something that I think, because it goes throughout September, is a nice thing to maybe dovetail if you've got visitors, or you're participating in Doors Open Days, or you're going around visiting things in Doors Open Days. Maybe have a wee look at this map as well and see if there's anything in the neighborhood where you could contribute some images for people to use. So how are we on time? Does everybody maybe want a little 10-minute break? Would that be acceptable at this time? Everybody needs to go get a fresh cup of tea before we look at creating our maps. I know I need a break. I need to, my tea is gone, and I need to talk for another hour. So
Thanks, Jen.
sorry, I've just started talking about community maps and I've not hit the record button. So another community map that Scotland's Urban Past did was in partnership with Down Syndrome Scotland. And this is a map of Glasgow. And again, it's the same way. What you're trying to get are really personal experiences of a city. And the ways that people interact with, the way people see it, the way people see themselves in it. And this was, again, based on some in-person events where people came together to chat and draw on maps. And sometimes, and again, this is an artist impression that comes out of the end of it, but I would say in my experience, sometimes you don't even need to produce something at the end of it that is this polished. Sometimes just the act of people looking at the landscape and seeing other people's points of views and having discussions in and around a landscape can be a really meaningful and nice experience. So the project that I will mention to you is querying the map of our city, which we did in Edinburgh. And I think Colin actually linked to this earlier in the chat. This was back in November 2018. Scotland's Urban Past, the Scottish Civic Trust, went and met up with LGBT health and well-being based in Edinburgh. And we were thinking about doing some kind of event in and around the built environment and heritage and the history of Edinburgh. And we held a focus group with their queer, trans, intersex, people of color group, just to say, what are the places in the city that you are interested in, that you feel are relevant to you? And one of the respondents said, actually, I don't even know where to place myself. As a queer person, as a person of color, there are competing identities. There's so many layered sort of intersectional ways to think about yourself. And it was hard to just identify places. And what we said, well, would it help if we got out a map? And yes, it did. Actually, there was a lot of discussion. We pulled out a map, and that's when we said, right, what we're going to do is some community mapping where we actually sit down and pinpoint where you feel that you maybe present yourself in different ways, or places that you have different experiences, and get into this idea of community mapping. So it was in February of 2019 that we held this event. This was at the City Art Center, which I think was such a lovely space for this particular activity. As you can see, you can look out the window. There's the Scott Monument. You're almost looking down right onto the center of the city. So when you're sitting there with some big maps spread out, and you can look out the window and really think about these spaces. Now, earlier in 2018, while we were conceiving of this project, actually in Montreal, there was a digital queering the map project that started, that when we started planning ours, we found out about this. So this is a really interesting project. This was Lucas La Rochelle in Montreal started this, and it was purely online. And it was parochial to start with. It was actually just going to be about the city of Montreal. But what they found was that people all around the world started pinning their experiences of being a member of the LGBT plus community, whether it was good experiences or bad experiences or memories. And so this is a purely digital map that anybody from around the world can contribute to. And what the team in Montreal does is just moderate these and just make sure everything is up to date, and sort of approves all of these various entries. So, we did something that was in person, and part of the whole purpose of the event was to bring people together and have a chat and talk through things. And this one is actually just worldwide and digital. And I would say that this is maybe quite a passive thing that you could put up. Obviously, you need to do some moderation and make sure the map functions. But it's not like you need to hold a multiple hour in-person event periodically to do this. There's something like this that can just continue on the back burner over a long period of time and grow over time. So for our event, again, we were doing this in person, working with LGBT health and well-being. That was the group originally that we started planning this with. And quickly, Our Story Scotland came on board. And if you're not familiar with Our Story Scotland, they have been collecting oral histories of the LGBT plus community since about the year 2000, I believe. So these oral histories are recorded and transcribed. They're deposited with the National Library for Scotland. If there is any actual artifacts or paraphernalia that come along with these things, those get deposited in National Museums of Scotland. So for us, again, what we were trying to do with maps was get a personal take on the city and sort of redraw the map or add layers to it. So Our Story sharing excerpts from some of these anonymized oral histories was, I think, a really good way to situate the audience to think that we're here. It's okay to talk about your own experiences of the geography, as well as saying things that are perhaps more historical. So to try to get people to think about their personal experiences on a map, we asked, where do you go to feel part of your community? Where do you feel safe? Where do you feel visible? Where do you feel that you are a whole person and you can just be yourself and feel good about it? So this is the actual physical map that was created. We actually had 3 mapping stations because we had so many people turn up. We couldn't get everybody around one table. So we had giant printed maps laid out, lots of markers and pens. And you can see what we did with all of these little identity flags. Because again, when this originally started, we were thinking about how all of us has lots of different hats that we wear and lots of different identities, depending on what group of friends, or if we're at work, or which club we are going to. We are presenting different facets of ourselves. And how do you represent that in a physical form when you're doing something like writing on a map? And we thought about these little identity flags because you could actually layer them with tape. You could put down as many as you like, all in the same place. And lots of different people could all put their ideas on it, so we could see where we have commonalities, think about other people's experiences. And again, some of this was quite personal, and some of it was more historical, as in Here is the first bookshop. This is where it was, versus here's something that very personal happened to me. So this is part of my landmark geography that maybe is meaningless to other people. And I think part of the best thing about this day, again, it's not necessarily the map that you produced the end of it, but it was the wonderful conversation that you got around the table of sharing memories, sharing stories, and sharing experiences. And the map was just the catalyst for all of that. And editing was involved. We introduced, we had sort of kept out the red pen and handed it to people after the fact. So groups swapped maps and got to see what other people did. So you could critique or challenge things if you've had a different experience, or if you thought, well, yes, this club is really fun, but actually, if you're a wheelchair user, it's not great because it's step-only access, right? You could sort of edit or put some notes onto these things. You were not allowed to remove anything. You couldn't scratch out what somebody else said, but you were able to layer your own experience on top of that. So this is the result that we came out with. So we had the physical ones that we wrote all over and then put all these together into a digital format. So for this, we used Story Map. The picture that I've got on my screen at the moment is actually a printed copy. So there are printed copies that LGBT Health and Wellbeing have at their office in Edinburgh. So people could walk in and take away a little map and actually go out and explore Edinburgh and use our map to see what people's experiences were. But I will show you on the link. Again, apologies that this takes a few minutes to load when you're trying to share everything over Zoom. So here's what we created. So this is a story map that is very much just sort of an interactive map. I will show you the way that you can use story map in slightly different ways to be more visual a little bit later. But we've got an explanation of what it is we did, when and where this all happened. And then again, that idea that we were trying to capture layers of experience. How do you do that? And here, when you do a map, you can actually put it in layers on the tab. So you can flick between all of these. You can see what people pinned. So we have the historical events, firsts and buildings, and then more personal stories and what people did. Venues, clubs, pubs, where people go to have fun, as well as the negative experiences and the places where people had unsafe experiences, as well as the places where people thought, actually, this is a good place to be, and I feel that I can be open and be myself in these areas. So that was one of our outputs. And again, we did this in a real life event, but then putting it online like this just means that after the fact, all of this it's like an archive of our day. It has a life and a legacy, and more people can continue to see it. So what tools are there for creating maps? So I've just shown you we did that through Story Map, and I'll revisit that in a moment. But
Jen, before you move on, I'm just going to interject with a question that Colin raised that maybe you or Alan or Catherine might be able to answer, which is, what are the foreign equivalents to OS maps, if they're comparable? He was mentioning about maps offering an insight as to why places are named as they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, Colin. There's not I mean, it's very different. OS maps, we're really lucky to have them. They're such a good resource. And I know, for example, in the States, it's very different. You do have government mapping, but I don't believe, it's been a while. I've been in Scotland for a long time now, so this may have changed, but it was not as accessible to get that information. And there are lots of other layers of data for somewhere like the US, where you've got local government, state government, and then the national, the federal government. So it wasn't a centralized mapping the same way as OS, and they may have changed that and built upon that now. So if somebody knows, you can correct me. Severine says for France, there is a centralized national mapping, and there's a link there if you want to go and explore that.
Yeah, so if you OS is the National Mapping Agency for Britain, and as such, you know, it has all the maps, and we've grown to know and love, and it also has some great data services that you can access. You know, most countries have national mapping agencies, and I've just put in a link there for. Oh, I didn't put it into everyone. Sorry, excuse me. Daniel received it, but not everybody else due to a previous conversation. So I just put in a link to Wikipedia, which has most of the national mapping. Well, it's national mapping agencies for a good number of countries. And but what's been said, you know, I think we are lucky with Ordnance Survey, and so. Maybe they're not all as good as that. Although in some respects, for instance, we noticed doing work with Norway and Iceland, and the national mapping agencies there have a very strong commitment to open data, which means, whereas Ordnance Survey is on more of a sort of commercial footing, or it tries to finance itself through that. So. And there's some strong things to be said in favour of having open data and having it openly available for use. Just in terms of it being a benefit to the economy overall. And you know, my view is that national mapping agencies shouldn't have to be raising money. They should be providing a service which helps stimulate what everybody else is doing. But yeah, so there's a link to Wikipedia and the different national mapping agencies, which will provide a variety of services at different levels, depending upon how well they're established and what the country is.
Yeah, thank you. And Colin was saying as well, there's the Soviet map of Glasgow. And again, these ideas of why maps are created, where you're trying to see where resources are, or where you know, where people live versus what is commercial. And, you know, obviously then you're also, when you're thinking about power structures and authority, maps that are created in colonial contexts. Again, that idea where you're trying to take a snapshot of a population and, you know, really as a way of control as well. So you know where everybody is and where potential problems might arise, or where you want to change things or redraw boundaries, right? So maps can be used. Maps are very powerful and can be used or abused.
There's a note from Severin about PastMap being a good resource.
Oh, yes. I had some slides on PastMap, and I actually removed them because I was worried about time. But if you want to, after the fact, if you want to chat PastMap, this is another Historic Environment Scotland resource, and I'm slightly obsessed with it because I think it's really fun. So if you get sort of nerdy about maps, go look up PastMap. So this is, I think it used to be maybe under the control of the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historic Monuments Scotland before that got lumped in to create HES. But you can look at, you can add lots of layers. You can see all the listed buildings. You can see designed gardens and landscapes. You can turn on battlefields. You can turn on everything, and it fills your screen with colors. And then you can also add layers of historic maps. So you can sort of switch between a modern and a historic. And I do think it's great fun, but I think by this point in the workshop, you probably know what kind of person I am. So that is my idea of a good time. So do go and check out PastMap if you think maps are interesting. And also the National Library of Scotland maps resource, which Emma has pointed out. Yes, I love that as well. And that one is interesting if you're doing, I really enjoy the estate maps. So when you're thinking about the end of the 18th century and into the early 19th century, when landlords across the UK are improving their lands, i.e. scientifically, empirically mucking around with the way land is being used, and changing the way their land is being used, you know, whether it's removing hedges or bringing in sheep, all the rest of it. The estate maps were done to enable them to do that. You need to know what you have and what all of your land resources are before you decide to drastically change them and change what you're doing. So again, maps there were really integral to that process. So creating maps. So I said, we did sort of an in-person event around creating the map, the LGBT plus map of Edinburgh. We've also done one in Ayr and Glasgow, which is fun. It doesn't have to be as structured as that. It doesn't have to be in person. You could do something quite passive if your site, sometimes what we do at events is just put out a map with some little luggage tags that you can write on. Just for people to share memories or things like that. But if you want to do these things digitally, which is why we're here for all of our digital skills, here are some resources for that. So at this point, this is very exciting, our virtual environment. We talked about the map of our virtual tours through Doors Open Days, where you can just go and explore, and it just links to tours that are readily available out there on the web. But it's not just a place to see a map. In fact, it is a whole virtual environment where you can add and upload things. So whether it is a map, creating a map, or just adding to something that exists, or putting up some photographs, or if you attended our virtual tours workshop and you're keen to go try doing some 360-degree photos that you've done with Street View, and you want somewhere to upload or to link into them and have them show up as part of a collection, you can do it here. So again, this is new for us. And this has been designed by Alan and the team. Ian's done a lot of work on it. So I think he's going to be able to walk you through a bit. Is that correct at this point?
Oh yeah, I think so. That would
okay,
be
so
that would be great. So maybe
shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, I think so. So the idea here, or the concept here, is to it's kind of sort of built around the idea of a virtual museum, so that there be an archive that it's possible to put places, objects into, and digital representations thereof. So whether that be a 3D model, or whether it be an image, or whether it be a video or a 360, they all go into this this archive, and from there they can then pop out as part of a gallery, as part of a map, embedded in a web page or some other way. So as we're talking about maps, this is an example of one. So I think if I just make my screen full, my page full screen, then I'll be able to see it. Oh no, you've made yours full screen. Okay, so this is yeah, Open Street Map. Is it View or Maps, Ian? I never remember.
Sorry, just trying the controls. It's OpenStreetMap. Yes, OpenStreetMap. I'm using the Leaflet API.
So yeah, I'm confusing you. So the original motivation for this was, as Jen said, is that there'd been a great map made of virtual tours across Scotland as a kind of step towards doing this digital open doors, because they thought that that was going to be a sort of coming thing in the future because of developments of technology, and so using Google Maps. Now I know I said earlier on you can put loads of stuff on Google Maps. You can, and they won't charge you for that, right? What happens is when you make your own map, okay, when you go into the system and you make your own map and populate it rather than using their under map, when you make your own map and then embed it, you have to have an account, and if you're successful and millions of people come and look at it, then they'll want to charge you. If you're unsuccessful and not many people look at it, which is what happens most of the time, then they won't be that bothered. But yeah, so because of all of that, I wanted to move it over to a platform where there would be no charging, and that's this OpenStreet Maps. Very similar to Google Maps, but open source and free, as you said, as Ian said, bounded by leaflet. And so you can then zoom in on a place, then when you click on one, you get a pop-up, and the pop-up shows you an image and a description. But from there, you can then see a virtual tour and or a media gallery. So this is a virtual tour in Round Me, but it brings together. We looked at Cooler, I think, before, and Round Me, so you can see all of that stuff. And there's something to press on the eye. I think that there's some information about it. And so the thing is there any images or any tours that you make, or actually that you just know about and think should be included in this? It would be great to have them. It would be great to have them inputted. I suppose the other thing is that once you've got these tours in there, then it's possible to embed them and share them in other ways. So if we could just kind of like, okay, so there's a map. So if we go to the maps thing here, you can see that there's actually multiple maps in here. So Jen, you did this. You put this querying the map of Edinburgh in, I think, yesterday.
I did yesterday because I did not know that this was as interactive as it was and that I could upload things to this. I thought this was something fancy that you guys just took our data points and dumped into it. And I didn't realize that actually any of us on this course today could go here and register and contribute to these various galleries. So as a test, the first thing that I added to this was the querying the map of Edinburgh. So it was very easy. It did not take me a lot of time. It was really good. So I just went in, I chose the media to upload. I said that it was a map, that I wanted it to go into the map gallery. And all I did was paste in the URL from that story map where that map had been created. And so it's now included in our, as one of our little collections as a project that we've done.
I think it would be, I think maybe one of the things we could do, Jen, after this is have a look through the chat here and see all the maps that have been recommended and put them in here. So it becomes a sort of collection of maps. And so if anybody has a map that they want to kind of like nominate for our Hall of Heritage Map, Heritage Map Hall of Fame, Heritage Map Hall of Humhof, then that would be great. Please stick it into the chat, and we will add it to here. Or better still, you could add it yourself. And in order to do that, you would have to go to the archive section. So you click on the archive there, and we're not logged in, so that's great. We can just show you it. So you click on login, and if you then you go to the registration page. And do you want to create a new user, Ian?
So and we'll do.
Okay, Ian 136. Why Ian 136, Ian?
That is my username on Yahoo because a very long time ago it suggested I do that because I couldn't get Ian. So
okay, because there are 136 other Ians. And then
possibly
you type in a password. Are you going to use your standard password?
I think I won't press register. Well, do you want me to actually go through?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Ian, please share your password with everybody who is attending the Zoom session today. Read it out loud and spell it twice for us.
I was going to ask him to do that, actually. I was going to just see whether it happened. But I pretty much, Ian's reasonably security conscious. So to the extent that you can never try to remember one of Ian's password is next to impossible. So what you have to do is write it down and stick it on your computer. Okay, and then you click register. Boom. It's already in use.
Yeah, well, I will have registered on the system multiple times already.
So you see there where it says workshops. That's an organisation that you can join. And so we've put it down. Workshops has been the default one, but there are some organizations that are there. And if you want your organization to be in this system, you have to email us and we'll set the organization up, and then you can register. But you can register as the workshops, as part of the workshop, so that's fine. So you registered successfully. So that's all there was to it, right? You just have to, enter the same password twice and have an email that's. I don't think you need to. Yeah, and then you click login, and then you're logged into the system. There you go. So that's great. Now, if you go back to the archive thing, so that's a bit of a faff, but you only have to do it once, and you see more options have appeared out of nowhere. And if we try upload, so we click on upload, this is the kind of fast track thing. So, and then choose a place. Okay, so you need to give it a title. Where shall we choose? What Jen? Why don't we do your offices? I don't think we've done your offices, have we?
Sure. So we're at the Tobacco Merchant's house.
Okay. I think it's okay. Great. That's it. Merchant's house, well done. And then give it a description.
42 Miller Street, headquarters of Scottish Civic Trust.
Okay, we could go back and edit. What is the URL? Is ddo.openvirtualworlds.org. Digital Doors Open.
I'm sorry, I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, that's great. It's in Glasgow, in fact.
Yep. So it's a Miller Street in the Merchant City.
So you then find a place.
So very central. Keep zooming in where you are. See where Merchant City is. Keep going in there. Move down towards the river a bit more. Yep. Right there. Number 42, if it gives you numbers. If not, it's the... Oh, there it is. It's just above. Move up ever so slightly.
Oh, right. You see 42. There you go. Yep. There you go.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, then submit.
Okay, that fills in the latitude and longitude. So if you have latitude and longitude, you can alternatively fill this in. Okay.
And now, if we go back to the map, we should see the place, no? So this is on the workshops map. Well, we can add it to the virtual tours map. We should probably zoom that in a bit as a default.
Oh, that's my fault. I forgot to add it to the layer. So I will just. Oops.
You shouldn't have to though. That should happen by default, shouldn't it?
I'll check. I wasn't seeing it there, so I'll just check whether it's in the layer or not. I might have. You're right. It should.
So again, this is our exciting new toy. So if you want to go in and explore, everybody who's here and actually try to upload things, it's really good, and you can give us feedback. So if you find something doesn't work or isn't user friendly, give us that feedback. And see if it's something that you are interested in using, if it would be useful to you.
Yeah, that would be really lovely if you could have a go and let us know how it went.
Yes, sorry, I was just being impatient. It did appear automatic. It was automatically put onto the workshops.
What it was. And so there, you click on it. Okay, so that's not a huge amount there, but we can add it. We can add stuff to it.
Yeah, so then I could go on presumably and upload a photo and then attach it to that record, or is that how it works?
Yeah. So if we go back to editing the thing.
So we can go in here and find it. It might be an easy way to do that, but yeah, we click on here and go edit.
So you could have done a search for the text, right? Okay.
Just
And so
Well, should we maybe actually take another short break if people need to stretch a bit? But if you want to actually try to go log into this and try uploading a picture or pinning something on the map, whatever your organization that you're affiliated with, if it's not already on the map, if you want to just have a go.
yeah,
So for example, I will go and upload a picture of the office. So anybody who wants to actually muck around with that at the moment, I don't know if the link has worked for everybody. It was it ddo.openvirtualworlds.org? And if you just want to have a quick play around with it for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. So if you want to play around, have a go. Otherwise, go refresh your cup of tea. And how about 3 o'clock? We will be back here.
Thanks, Jen. That's great.
Register. Did anybody have a success in uploading anything? Or at least in poking around and looking at things? I uploaded an image.
There's a question.
I've managed to register.
Yay!
I'm looking at the page for the McManus Gallery, but it took too long to download. I couldn't get it.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we only gave you 10 minutes, so yeah. It was a very quick peek.
There's a question, Jen, from Sharon, who's asking how to edit an entry that she's uploaded, but she now wants to edit it. So whether maybe Ian or Catherine can help answer that question.
Ian, Dalit and Catherine will be, because again, this is brand new to me as well, everybody. So I am experimenting just as you are.
So if you go to the search archive, if you go back to the archive page and then click on search archive, that'll give you a list of all the items and thing. So the newest ones are at the bottom, so you probably want to scroll to the bottom, assuming that you've just created this item, and then click on the edit button, and that should take you to a form that will edit it. I'm going to change the search archive thing so that it lists only your stuff, or at least by default, to make it easier to find the things you've created. But at the moment, it lists everything. So that's is that
okay.
Is that yes. Understandable? Clear?
Yes, and I think again it's a work in progress. So if you have comments, please forward them on to us. You can get in touch with me. My email is all over all of these digital skills workshops, but I'll pop it in the chat as well. If there's anything you want to feed back on, please feel free to email me about it, because it would be nice to make this a tool that worked for people and is, I don't know, Godsall, maybe you will disagree or agree with this, but the idea that this is a space where out with the festival, this is just something that for all of our participants in the workshops and our Doors Open Days wider community, you can upload stuff at any point. This doesn't have to be something that is limited to September. If you want to play around with it, if you're creating some things and you want to share with other people in the workshop things that you have created, you just want to practice a bit, this is a nice place to share them.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a good point, Jen, because actually during Doors Open Days, events and activities will happen and will be promoted through each region's program. So if there is anything on here that is happening during Doors Open Days, we can then highlight that during that month. But in the meantime, adding things there maybe saves a mad rush in September as well. It means that you're kind of starting to upload things and showing people who are looking at that during the year, and we can pull out those links and highlights as we need to.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. Yes. Do you want to take that one, Godsall?
Yeah, I was just it's really going back to Ian. Is it only for places in Scotland? I mean, my take on that is that we're using this map for Doors Open Days Scotland. So that would be specifically about Scottish events and venues.
But I would say if you want to add something to the workshops map, if you're attending from
anyone
somewhere,
has a different take on that.
I would say if you're attending from somewhere else, but you're in our workshops, then add it to the workshops map, because you're very welcome to take part in that map. Does that make sense? There's also a question, the toolkits. Yeah, so the toolkits have been populated by the Catch team. So they're not the current sessions, but I will update them with material from the sessions. Tina had asked that. So right now what I've been doing is keeping a Google Drive for all of our actual workshop materials, but I can port all that over to these toolkits so you can get it in various places. I know sometimes people have issues accessing Google Drive, especially if you work for a council or that. So this might be another place to get that information. What I will do, I will copy all that stuff over once it's all finalized, Tina, if that makes sense. Right. So I'd like to move on if there's no more questions at the moment, but please do, whenever you like, go and experiment with this and add things and poke around and maybe even make your own map, whatever it is that you want to do. I am going to share my screen again. Okay, so hopefully you're back with me now. So that was our bespoke digital environment that was created by all these lovely folks at St. Andrews for us to share all of our resources. Other places that you can use to create maps and to share your information and to show off your projects or your properties, I'm going to highlight History Pin. I don't know if any of you have used this before. I'll take you there and show you a few examples. It's very much a social platform. So the idea of History Pin is that you go ahead, you can curate a story, you can put up maybe historic images, you can put up some information in text and pin things on maps. You can even create little tours in it. But the idea is that other people can also add to your collection. So you can crowdsource things, you can make it a bit more interactive, you can ask people to share, and people can also comment on it as well. I'll show you a story map after this, which I think can be quite flashy and visual. So History Pin, the interface is maybe not super flashy. What you get is a map and a gallery of things that you can click through. It's also particularly good if your project or property or whatever it is that you're associated with has collections of material and you want to upload a series of photographs and show people where those things are on a map. So some examples. This is the National Collection of Aerial Photography. So you can see this is the sort of default interface. You've got the map on the left-hand side with your gallery, so people can click through that. They can see the information, the metadata, whatever it is that you enter about it, a bit of text, a description, as well as the link to go to it. But on the map, you can see where these locations are. Or, vice versa, you can zoom in on the map and do all the searching through the map and see what images are for your corresponding area. National Trust for Scotland did a sort of curated trail, the Robert Bruce Trail. So you can see what they've done is actually give you step-by-step stations along with a map that has these locations pinned. So they've got an image, they've got a bit of text, and you just click through it, sort of almost like a little slideshow, slide by slide. So that's the way that they've used this resource. The John Gray Centre, the Archive of the East Lothians, have uploaded various parts of their collection. And again, it's just being able to see all of those sort of geolocated on a map as well as see the photographs. So it's just a nice visual way of clicking through things rather than perhaps visiting a catalog to look through these. You can actually see some of them. This was a tour that I was involved with at the University of Glasgow. Again, this is sort of looking back to the First World War centenary. This was an actual guided walking tour, step by step, that you could do it on your phone, or you could just do it on your screen using archival images of what the university campus looked like at the time, the personalities involved, what professors were living in which property and what their relation to the First World War was. And again, it's just making people go through it in stages, and you're creating the narrative. I will, again, bear with me while this takes a minute to load. I created a little collection. This was just the other day. It took me maybe about a half an hour, so it's really not exhaustive. I just threw it together because I thought if you're interested in History Pin, you might want to practice with something. So if you want to practice with this, again, you can see the sort of social side of it. So all I did was, the map's not great because I think it's all just located in Glasgow at the moment. But here's the sort of thing you can do with it. This is the image that I uploaded, and then you can put in text. You can put in a bit more text than this if you like. If you want to go on and practice with History Pin, if it's something you think you might want to do, you can create your login, register. You can come in here and practice leaving comments if you want. You can upload and add to this collection. This is for you to practice with. So if you want to pin your own, a picture or a place, anything that you like. Here, what I've done is link to YouTube video. It's not video, it's audio interviews that were done with Michael Hitchin, who is the longtime organizer for Ayrshire, as well as John Gerard, who is the first director of the Scottish Civic Trust. So in 1989, when Doors Open Days started, these two gentlemen were the first organizers. It happened in Glasgow and Ayr in 1989, when the city was the European capital of culture. So again, all I've done here is put in the link from YouTube. So I didn't need to create any content. All I had to do was link to it from this little interface. So again, this is the stuff you can go on and practice with this collection. And I have the link in the PowerPoint slides, but I believe it's just Doors Open Days, I think is the collection. I'll pop it in the chat once I get out of this slide. So that's something that you can do if you want it just to have a go with History Pen. Oh, there it is. Yes. It's historypin.org/en/Doors Open Days with dashes in it. And again, I'll pop it in the chat before we're done with the session today. The other resource useful is Story Map. So if you think back to the Querying the Map of Edinburgh project, that was a story map. That was it's sort of, there's a newer version of Story App. So that's the sort of grandfathered in one. And it was very much map based, that particular story, but it's still there. It's still accessible. What story maps, in my opinion, are good for is for presenting the information. So when you think about what we've done today, there's just making sure that you're pinned on a map, that you're highlighted on a map, maybe adding to other people's maps, adding a picture or adding a few things, actually creating your own map and sharing it. So this is when you really want to tell a story. It's not just pinning places. It's where you want to add interpretation and you want to go through and offer information as part of this. This is not for crowdsourcing or social interaction. You can't comment on these. The public can't comment on it. They just consume it. It's something that you create and you offer to them. So there's not a feedback. There's not a two-way communication with this. And you can make it look awfully flashy if you practice with it. And it is free. I would say History Pin and Story Map, you can do completely free versions. And then I think it's like everything, you can upgrade, but it doesn't have all of the ads and the other things that some things do. So the History Pin I just showed you, that was just free. I've not done anything fancy with that. So I'm going to show you an example of one of the story maps. I was very taken with this one. So someone has gone on and done the Travels of Indiana Jones. So the way this works, so this is all just put together. All of the tools that you need to do this are right here. There's no fancy coding or editing that you need to do. Introducing Indiana Jones and the films. So looking at Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first film, and this is the bit that I really like. It's going to take a minute again because it's just load a little bit slower than if you were just doing it on your own here. There's a lovely map and it shows you the plot of the film, where the locations are. And I'm just scrolling down the screen is what I'm doing right now. And it does the wonderful little dotted travel line that happens in the films every time Indy gets into a plane or a train or a boat, or what does he do? Does he get in a Zeppelin at one point in the third one? I just takes you through all these maps. I think this is just a really cool way of telling a story. It looks really nice. And this is like everything that we've talked about in this workshop, but in previous ones as well. You can share this. You can just share it via social media. You can link to it. You can also embed it in your own web page as you create these things. So again, I will show you something that I created with minimal time and effort. So it's not nearly as fun as Indy's journeys all over the continent. I guess he's all over Scotland at the moment, wasn't he? He was in Glencoe, he's in the Borders, he's apparently going to be in Glasgow, the new one they're filming. I don't know. So maybe they'll make a new map with all the Scottish locations in it. Who knows what Scotland's supposed to be, if it's actually set in Scotland. So this one I created as just a little placeholder story about the workshops. All right, so this was in 2019 when Alan and Chris came out to Paisley to do some 360-degree photography. This was us practicing our 360-degree photography in Paisley Abbey. So if you wanted, here's a map interface with some points, and I put in a few of the people that participated in the workshops the first ever time we ran them. This is a terrible picture, but bear with me because I just needed a placeholder. So again, you can have there's different ways of doing this. I've just bunged in a wee bit of text. Here's Alan presenting to that group in 2019 when we did a virtual tours activity. And again, there's just the Scottish Civic Trust. So this was very minimal effort. It was something just put together to show you what you can do. So if you spent actual time playing around with it, you could do something that actually looks very flashy. And all I've done here is upload photos, upload text, and you can just drag and drop and move things around to get them how you like them. So hopefully you can see what that is. Now with this one, obviously you can't comment on it or share it or do it. So if you want to practice with story maps, you're just going to have to go in and just have a go. So those are the different ones that I would recommend, the sort of freely available, vaguely easy to use things of creating maps and sharing them. So I don't know if any of you have experiences with any of these or would like to suggest alternatives. But we have some time. We've got about 10 minutes for some more discussion or questions around any of these topics.
I'd encourage people as well just to unmute themselves and ask a question rather than putting stuff in the chat, because it might just be easier.
Well, it's okay. You can do either. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Whatever you feel comfortable with, and whatever your internet connection will allow. Because I think sometimes on a slow connection, chat is better.
I was just recently, I said in the wee breakout group that I had earlier, sorry, it's Colin Cooper, that last year it was quite an innovation, if I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I was approached to create a COVID-safe mitigation of scavenger hunt, so treasure hunt for kids. And it went so well because I intermingled it with historic facts of the locality and interests that it did plot a wee map. It wasn't publicly shared or anything. It wasn't a commercial venture at all, but it was reminiscent of Annika Rice's treasure hunt days. If anyone remembers that, it was very much riddle. It took 2 days to prepare, but it was really fun creating riddles based on history and locality, and of course the object that they were to find. So yeah, it's a wee bit of creativity and using maps. It can be quite a fun and educational tool.
And that sounds like a lot of fun. I would like doing that, and I'm sure my kids would like doing it as well. Again, it's I think with maps, it invites you to be interactive out in a space, especially if it's a trail, or doesn't it? It's sort of encouraging you to go out and see the things. And alternatively, if you can't
one thing I did discover when I was, sorry.
Oops, sorry, Colin. Go ahead.
No, again, it leads itself to what you may have been about to say. Geocaking was something that I came across in a physical presence myself by accident when I was traipsing over the Orkneys. I found a wee box, I opened it up, and I was introduced to the world of geocaking. And yeah, if anyone wants to know more, Google it. It's fun.
Yeah, geocaching has like a huge following worldwide.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to add to what we've been talking about here, either about mapping or about the resources? I don't know if anybody has experience of creating a map or a tour or something that you'd really like to talk about. Oh, we used this and it worked really well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great presentation. I mean, it's been nice to see how many different examples. History pin, I think, looks really good. But people have been coming up with lots of examples of way that they've used maps and so on. I think that's been really nice, and the number of contributions we've been getting to the chat has been great as well.
Yes, thank you all. And again, we'll port over whatever links you've shared or information will go into the resource document that will come around via email, the links to that. But I will also look into putting it up into the toolkits as part of our virtual environment. I think that would be a fun space to have that material hosted as well.
Jane, sorry, I did put a link to it earlier on in the chat, but something that I wasn't sure was picked up was there's a company of video game makers that have imported a video game that's popular these days with history to the point where Visit Ireland has used it in their commercial adverts, showing the main character in the game environment, but it's just a reflection of what already exists historically as landmarks. But that same company, the video game company, have migrated into making an educational resource using the game as a platform to just open access to people interested in the history of that particular place it's set at.
So I think you're talking about Assassin's Creed.
I didn't want to name drop in case there was a commercial thing, but yeah, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And
yeah, it's all about
Ubisoft was the company. Yeah.
Vikings and stuff. Yeah, it's great. The Scottish government had a go at getting them to do Scotland like a few years ago, but I don't think it came off. Not quite sure why.
We've got a lot of.
Well, I think all of these, it just shows, prior to the pandemic, but then also in the past year, how creative we can all be about sharing our stories, and just responding. And this is from sort of reflecting on some of the other workshops as well. That we can come up with creative solutions and find lots of different ways to tell our stories and to tell about the things that we're interested in, that we're knowledgeable about, and that we're passionate about sharing. And for me, I think maps is a really good way to do that. So it can be something very simple, as just creating a Google map or an Open Street View or OpenStreetMap that people can just click through, or you can do something flashier and add storytelling to it. But and especially when people maybe can't travel around as much, or even just it's Scotland on a rainy day. If you don't feel like going out, maybe you want to have some sort of exciting tour or map experience just in the comfort of your own home. But really, there's a lot of possibilities. You don't need a ton of time and practice to come up with something fairly interesting. And it's, there's a lot of user-friendly, free stuff out there to suit whatever your project is. So, is there I don't know if there's anything else coming up in the chat, any other burning questions? But I will just start wrapping up. So thanks again to Alan and Ian and Catherine for their work over the course of the series. Thanks to Godsel for being there to help monitor the chat and do all the stuff I can't do while I'm sharing my screen and feeling weirdly dissociated because I can't see you all on the Zoom while I'm looking at my slides. We have one more workshop. This is our penultimate, one more. So if you've been with us for the lot of them, I don't know, you get some sort of distinguished service medal. I need to come up with some sort of badge that I get to post out to you.
Campaign medal.
I know, campaign.
A campaign medal. But I mean, we might be able to think of some more. We might be able to do something.
Yes.
But I was just wanting to say, if anybody wanted to had an idea for a mapping project or was wanting to do a mapping project, feel free to drop us an email, and maybe we could get some collaborations going.
Yep. And so if you like this one and you want to join us again next week for our last, it will be live broadcasting using Facebook, Zoom, and YouTube. I'm going to pass that one back to Alan and the team. So I will be back to just monitoring the chat and doing the things that I do. So if you're available, we'd love to see you again next week. Otherwise, thanks all very much. I'll be in touch again with sending out the resources. And it was lovely to see you all.